Controlling the movement phase is one of the key skills in competitive 40k. Denying your opponent the ability to move his units where he wants to move them is massive. It can keep your whole army out of assault range, it can keep it out of shooting range as well. I cannot overemphasize how good this skill is to learn. Now, I'm going to be going over some advanced techniques on how you can move block your opponent, both with standard units and units which can fly as well. In fact, I'm going to show you how you can move block against a Talos, one of the scariest flying assault units in the game. I can bring him down from an 8-inch move down to a measly 3-inch move, which can massively affect the effectiveness of that unit. Now, that sounds fun, right? Doesn't it? So, let's dive straight in. Welcome guys, it's Andy here from D6 Evolution. Now, this video is all about movement blocking in 40k, which is one of my favourite techniques, and it has won me a lot of games, so pay attention to this one. Seriously, it's awesome. Now, if you're new to the channel, D6 Evolution is all about 40k tactics, and it's about making you guys better 40k players. We do regular battle reports and we do little tactics breakdowns such as this one here. So if you like what you're seeing, remember to subscribe. Now, this technique in particular relies on you knowing your opponent's army. So there is a pre-game planning sheet which you can download for free in the video description below. So I suggest you check that out after the video as well. So on with the video and the first scenario. So here we have it. We have our Custodes gun line here with our Astra Militarum allies up against an Imperial Knight. Now, I've lined up my Astra Militarum guys here. I've lined them up just outside of an inch of this Imperial Knight who's not a character. So I've put them at maximum unit coherency, and the idea behind this is the Imperial Knight can't fit between the bases here, and that because he's not falling out of combat, actually this Imperial Knight can't move over these models. Some of you may be wondering, can't Imperial Knights just can't walk over infantry? In fact, they can't. They can only fall back over infantry. So if this knight wasn't in combat, he can't actually move over these infantry models. But let's not get tied down with the individual units here, because they don't matter. So what I've done here is that this infantry squad has limited this Imperial Knight's movement. So he can't move up the board because this Imperial Knight's a combat monster. He's also incredibly effective at shooting as well, and his Gatling cannon here is only 36-inch range, and as you can see when you look down at the rest of the battlefield against the Caladius grav tanks here, he's actually just out of range of them. So I've put my movement screen just over 36 away from my tanks, so in my opponent's shooting phase he can't actually shoot them. Whereas my gun line is actually very long range and can just continue to shoot him. So with this technique, you can effectively block your opponent out of large areas of the board. So the key thing here is that your opponent can't come within an inch of your models in the movement phase. And as the movement phase happens before the psychic phase, before the shooting and the assault phase, he can't effectively kill those models which are standing in front of him. In fact, there's very few things in the game which effectively kill models in the movement phase. The other thing to note here is that I have placed my infantry squad, second infantry squad, ready to replace that screen for next turn. So that every turn he tries to move an inch or two forwards, and yes, he kills what's in front of him, but I hide the next squad out of line of sight, ready to take that position. So flyer movement blocking. Now this is crazy stuff here. So what we've got here is we've got a Talos who has a 8-inch move. Now what I've done here is I've stood a guardsman at the 7-inch mark from the back of his base, and the key thing here is you measure from the back of the base. So when this Talos tries to move over the guardsman, the back of his base is still going to be within an inch of that guardsman. So effectively he has to, instead of landing where he is, he has to move back the other side of the guardsman, and he massively reduces his movement, and he's probably only moving just over 3 inches a turn now with that. Which for a combat unit such as a Talos is huge. The key thing to remember here is that the rest of your models behind the Talos, they have to be more than 12 inches away, because when those guardsmen die, that Talos is still going to try and assault you, so you've got to be out of 12 inches. As you can see with this Caladius grav tank, the bigger that the base gets, the more movement blocking you can actually do. And this Caladius grav tank is only actually moving 4 or 5 inches instead of 14 inches. So it's massive. And if you do this, repulsors is my favorite with this. If you do this to a repulsor, because most of its guns are only 24 or 30 inches, you can effectively get a repulsor gun line out of actual range of you. It's crazy. The other thing to note here is that some people, if you look at these custodies, and yes, I know custodies can do stooping dive, which does limit this effectiveness of this. But if you look at this custodies here, he has his base is actually longer than it is wide. And what you'll probably see some people try and do is turn the base when they try and move over you. Though remember, if you measure from the back of the base, that's as far as the model can go. Because if you look at one of the first lines in the movement phase, it says no part of the model can ever move further than its maximum distance. And by turning the actual base here and still moving it 14 inches, what they're doing is they're moving the back part of the base probably 15 or even 16 inches there. So they're actually doing an illegal move by doing that. So remember, measure from the back of the base. So it doesn't matter how they want to turn the model then, if you measure from the furthest away point, you'll always be okay with this technique. So I think you can sometimes be a little bit too clever for your own good with this technique. Yes, I have placed this guardsman at 7 inches, but in actual fact, against these Talos, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd be much more inclined to put them at 8 inches, because when you factor in the fact that you've got spaces in between the individual guardsmen, what you tend to find is that actually your opponent can find a place to place those Talos. So put them at the 8-inch mark, and the further apart that you actually space your models to move block, the further back you actually have to place those guardsmen. So there's certainly a couple of pitfalls that can occur with this sort of technique. So the most important thing to remember is heroic intervention. Just remember it. There's plenty of things in the game which have heroic intervention. There's characters, remember knights, Imperial Knights become characters when they take relics, when they take warlord traits of those Imperial Knights can move 3 inches after the end of your charge phase, even if you didn't charge anything. Other units such as Death Watch squads can have it, if they've got a black shield in there. Custodies, they can stooping dive, so they can charge at the end of your charge phase. So just watch out for these things. Be aware that they're there. Some characters can even heroically intervene 6 inches, so you've got to really be careful that you've got to know what your enemy does. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is that sometimes your opponent can actually use your movement screen against you. So they can try and trap your guardsmen, and by doing that they can effectively stop themselves being shot on your turn. So that's really important to know about that. And we've got a video, and I'll drop the link in the description below, and it's called Pinning Units in Combat, and it's a really key skill in 40k at the moment. The other thing that they can do, just remember to place your models, particularly models which can be tagged, such as Devastators or other units which can't just fall back and shoot. Just remember that actually your opponent can still assault your screen and pile in and consolidate, particularly if there's a big unit, and it can still tag other units in combat. So the further back you can put your models behind your screen, the better. I think at this point it's important to talk about how a movement screen differs from an assault screen. So in an assault screen, your opponent can get within an inch of your screen. So it's important that those spaces between your models, they are less than the base size of the thing you're trying to screen out. So for example, the Eversaw, it's got just over an inch base. So it's important that those spaces between my guardsmen are less than an inch, just so it can't move through that and tie up or assault things that are of more value to me. So I think the other thing to talk about here is that a 25mm base is actually less than an inch, and it's important to remember that because a good tournament player will use that against you. So if you place your key characters such as this Commissar here next to the guardsman, that my Eversaw can actually charge in and he can still attack that Eversaw through the guardsman because he's less than an inch away. So to actually make a good assault screen again for that Commissar, what I'd need to do is just move those guardsmen out just a little bit, so that Eversaw can't actually get within an inch. So that's really, really important. So there are other applications for movement screening. In particular, you can actually block your opponent from getting out of transports. And we've got a video planned on that, so watch out for that one. Now, if you want to see movement screening in practice, check out the link up here where we have Imperial Knights facing off against Deathwatch. No spoilers, but it is a absolutely awesome game. And if you want to see our latest content, check out the link down here as well. Now, If you like what you see, remember guys, subscribe to the channel. We love your support, and comment below. Let me know what you think of these tactics. If there's anything else you want to cover, let me know.